I'm Genevieve. There is a mythology around the family business. The shared purpose, the legacy, the passing of the torch. We are told it is a living thing, nurtured by generations. What they don't tell you is that a living thing must also metabolize. It must consume to grow. And sometimes it consumes its own. My name is Genevieve Thorne. For 30 years, I was the Chief Operating Officer of Thorne Agricultural Holdings. My father's empire. My brother's kingdom. And for one Thanksgiving evening, it became my battlefield. We didn't fight over the white meat or the dark. We fought over equity shares and board seats. The weapon wasn't a carving knife, but a clause in our father's trust. And the collateral wasn't pride, but a $50 million harvest, sitting in silos, waiting to see who owned them by dawn. This is the story of the night the gravy boat sailed into a war zone. The invitation came not by post, but through my assistant. A forwarded email from my brother, Charles, the CEO. Family Thanksgiving at the estate. 4 p.m. Formal. Critical family business to discuss post-dessert. Your attendance is mandatory. The word mandatory was a flare shot across my bow. Charles and I had operated in a state of armed truce since our father's passing 3 years prior. He took the crown. I took the reins. He was the visionary face on magazine covers. I was the engine in the fields, the one who made sure the payroll cleared and the grain got to market. He resented my operational control. I distrusted his financial gambles. The estate was our childhood home, a sprawling Virginia horse farm turned corporate headquarters. A place of memory, now a stage for power plays. I knew what critical family business meant. The company was leveraged. Charles's latest acquisition, a flashy organic snack food company, was bleeding cash. The board of directors, stacked with his allies, was getting nervous. The quarterly reports were a week from publication, and they would be ugly. I arrived at 3:58 p.m., not a minute early, granting no semblance of eagerness. The great hall smelled of pine, roasting turkey, and profound anxiety. My sister-in-law, Celeste, greeted me with a brittle smile. My nephew, David, a recent MBA graduate Charles had installed as a strategic advisor, would not meet my eye. Charles stood by the fireplace, a tumbler of bourbon in hand, the patriarch at rest. He was 56, but in that moment he looked like our father's ghost. Genevieve, you came. You said it was mandatory. For the family's sake, he said, his voice a low hum. The family or the firm? He offered a thin smile. Aren't they the same thing? Dinner was a masterpiece of tension. The clink of silverware was deafening. Polite inquiries about health and weather felt like coded messages. David held forth on disruptive innovation in agri-tech, a not-so-subtle critique of my antiquated, operational models. I parried with logistics data on yield per acre, watching his theoretical jargon crumble against actual numbers. We were fencing with salad forks. It was over coffee and pecan pie that Charles laid down his napkin, the sound a starter's pistol. Now that we're all comfortable, he began, though no one was, it's time we address the structural weaknesses in Thorne Holdings. The world is changing. Our vertical integration model is a relic. My team has drawn up a restructuring plan. He nodded to David, who produced sleek leather-bound portfolios, passing them around the table like a sommelier offering a poison vintage. Mine landed before me with a soft thud. Project New Dawn. The title alone was an insult. I opened it. Page 1. A proposal to spin off the entire Midwestern grain operation, my life's work, the profitable, stable heart of the company, into a separate entity and take on strategic debt against it to fund expansion in the lifestyle foods sector. Page 5. A new organizational chart. My title, COO, was absent. In its place, advisor to the CEO. My direct reports were rerouted to David, who was slated to become Chief Transformation Officer. It was a coup. Drafted on company letterhead. Served with dessert. The heir left the room. Celeste studied her cutlery. David's knuckles were white on his chair. I slowly closed the portfolio. The sound was final. "You're leveraging my division to pay for your mistake," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "It's not a mistake, it's a pivot," Charles said. "And it's not your division, Genevieve. It's the family's division. This is a consolidation. For efficiency. You are proposing to mortgage the crown jewels to save a sinking dinghy. And you are relieving me of command. I am streamlining reporting. Your expertise will be invaluable in an advisory capacity." I looked at him, this brother I had built forts with, whom I had defended on schoolyards. I saw only a CEO protecting his failing strategy by eliminating the most credible internal critic. And if I advise against this? The board has seen the presentation. They are prepared to vote on Monday. The family trust controls 51% of the voting shares. As the trustee and CEO, my vote is decisive. He had planned this. He had the board. He had the trust documents. He had the gavel. He believed he had checkmate. He had forgotten one thing. I had spent 30 years not just running operations, but studying the architecture of the entire company. I knew its wiring, its plumbing, its hidden crawl spaces. And I had come to dinner prepared for a skirmish. I just hadn't known it would be a war. I took a sip of water. I placed the glass down with exquisite care. "You're right, Charles. The trust is decisive." A flicker of triumph in his eyes. I continued. "But you are incorrect on one material point. Your vote is not the only one that matters." All eyes were on me. The fireplace crackled. "Father's trust," I said, "established in 2010, names you as primary trustee." "Correct. However, Clause 17.b, the Succession and Dispute Resolution Clause, states that in the event of a proposed major asset sale or restructuring impacting more than 33% of the trust's core holdings, a full family council must be convened. Not the board, the family. And any vote must be unanimous among the listed beneficiaries." Charles's face went still. "The beneficiaries are you, me, and David." "And Aunt Helena," I said softly. "Aunt Helena. Our father's reclusive, sharp-minded older sister. A former corporate lawyer who lived in Switzerland and despised Charles's frivolity. She held a tiny non-voting share, but under the specific terms of 17.b, her consent was required. Charles dismissed it with a wave. Helena is 92 and hasn't answered a phone in years. Her share is irrelevant. She'll sign whatever I send her." "I took the liberty of visiting Aunt Helena last month in Zurich," I said. "We had a lovely chat about fiduciary responsibility and the importance of stewardship. She gave me a signed, notarized power of attorney to represent her interests in all matters pertaining to the trust." The silence was absolute. David's mouth hung open. Charles's hand tightened around his bourbon glass. I had not planned this specific move, but I had fortified my position. I had seen the storm clouds and built a seawall. The power of attorney was in my briefcase, in the hall. A single sheet of paper, my secret treaty. "So you see," I continued, "your plan requires my unanimous consent, which I do not give. And without it, you cannot leverage the grain assets. The board vote on Monday is therefore moot. They cannot vote on a transaction the trust cannot approve." Charles's composure shattered. "You scheming bitch. You've been planning this." "I was protecting the company from you," I shot back, my calm evaporating. "You were going to gut the only thing that works to fund your vanity project. You're not a visionary, Charles. You're a vandal in a tie." The dinner table was now a boardroom in hell. Celeste fled to the kitchen. David stared, paralyzed. Charles stood, leaning on the table. You think you've won? I am the CEO. I can override. I can call an emergency vote. And I, as COO and holder of Aunt Helena's proxy, control 34% of the voting bloc. Enough to call for an independent audit of the snack food acquisition. An audit that will, I am certain, reveal the gross overvaluation and the creative accounting used to justify it. It was a nuclear threat. An audit would expose his failure, invite regulatory scrutiny, and crater his credibility with the remaining board members. He was trapped. His face purpled. You would destroy the company's reputation to get back at me? No, I said, standing to meet him at eye level across the ruined feast. I am preventing you from destroying it. The audit is the alternative. Here is the new deal. And I laid out my terms. My voice was cold, clear, the voice of a negotiator in a hostile takeover, which is precisely what this was. 1. Project New Dawn is scrapped. Immediately. 2. The snack food division is to be quietly wound down or sold. 3. David is removed from any strategic role and placed in an operational position under my direct report to learn the business from the ground up. 4. A new independent director is added to the board, my nomination. 5. My operational control over all core assets is solidified in a new governance agreement. 6. You, Charles, remain CEO and public face. But major strategic decisions now require a dual key. Your signature and mine. It was a demotion for him. A neutering. I was taking the engine room and locking the door to the bridge. He slumped into his chair, a deflated king. The fire had gone out of him. He looked at the remains of the Thanksgiving feast, the congealed gravy, the half-eaten pie, the symbol of abundance, now a tableau of ruin. All this, he whispered, for a company. No, Charles, I said, gathering my coat. For the family. The company was just the thing we were about to kill. I walked out into the cold November night. The scent of wood smoke and victory was sharp in the air. That was 5 years ago. Charles is still CEO. He travels, gives speeches, cuts ribbons. I run Thorn Holdings. It is more profitable than ever. We sold the snack division at a loss, a lesson written in red ink. David now manages one of our grain hubs. He's become surprisingly good at it. We have a functional, if frosty, respect. Aunt Helena passed away 2 years later. She left me her shares in her will, with a note that read, for the century. Thanksgiving is now a quiet affair at my home. Charles does not attend. I learned that the most hostile takeovers are not launched from skyscrapers with armies of lawyers. They are launched across a dinner table, with the people who know your heart best, and therefore know exactly where to aim. You must always read the fine print. Especially the fine print written in family blood. And sometimes, you must be willing to bring your own terms to the table, carved not in stone, but in the understanding that the only way to save the thing you love may be to seize it from the hands that are strangling it. I keep this as a memento. It was on the table that night. When Charles slammed his fist, the flame went out. It has remained unlit ever since. Some fires, once extinguished, should not be rekindled. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.